If a Brexit referendum was held today, would you vote any differently to what you voted in 2016? Well, according to some of the media, such as The Guardian, The Independent, who are practically wetting themselves with excitement, up to 20% of Leavers are now saying that they would rather remain in the European Union. This is based on a Question Time episode recently, where an audience of Leavers were polled by Question Time and asked, would they vote to leave or remain today? What would they do? And apparently it came out with 20% said they would stay in the EU, 70% said that they would still vote to leave, and 10% were unsure. Now, notice the great spin of the media and these excitable left-wing outlets who are now saying 20% of Leavers say that they'll leave. I mean, they could have simply said 70% of the audience are still certain, 10% are not certain. But they have now spun it in order to make it look like, this is it, everyone. This is our chance to go back in. It's time to go back in the EU because this is what the country wants. Have they taken into account the people in this country, the Remainers, who are now thinking to themselves, if we could go back, I would vote for Brexit? Because there are quite a few of those. And are they taking into account that the spin that they are spinning is not quite what is really happening? And speaking of spinning, the king of spin, Alistair Campbell, he was there on the show. And he came out with some stuff that, well, I'll read it to you. He basically said, you were lied to. You were told it would be pain-free. We're all of us paying a higher price in our cost of living and everything else because of the lies that were told. And then went on to say how Boris Johnson has to be held accountable for what he did. So here we go. Here's the narrative. Blame Boris. Blame Brexit. Blame Brexit for everything, despite the fact that the cost of living crisis has nothing to do with Brexit and is all down to the Bank of England and Western banks, who decided to make things incredibly difficult for people by creating the money and a credit explosion. So there you go, spinning away as usual. Now, The Telegraph has also got a headline that is just released, which is that the majority of voters believe Brexit was a mistake. 53% of people said it was a mistake in a poll. And guess who this poll was commissioned by? The Tony Blair Institute. You could not make that up. You're now putting out a headline that is giving the impression that we all want to go back into the European Union. A poll commissioned by the Tony Blair Institute. And then you've got Alistair Campbell on Question Time talking about how we were all lied to and we want to go back in. Speaking of lies, wasn't it Alistair Campbell and Tony Blair who were instrumental in the biggest lie ever told to the British public when they dragged us into an illegal war in Iraq? Obviously that skipped their notice. Now, I think as well that a lot of the media and people in general, of course they like to focus on the negatives, but there are obviously a lot of positives that don't get as much attention, we have saved £191 billion by not being in the EU's COVID recovery scheme. We have £1 billion that can go into the economy because we're being less heavily regulated. We would not have been able to support Ukraine as we had if we were tied to the EU. And so importantly, we are not being dictated to by Brussels bureaucrats. Now that is essential. And this is something that die-hard Remainers till this day still don't understand. They don't understand that one of the fundamental driving forces behind voting to leave the EU for so many people was all about patriotism. It was about your love of your country. It was about wanting independence. It was about not being told what to do. This is something that escapes their notice. And what is one of the fundamental features of patriotism? It's loyalty. If you have that loyalty in you, you're not just going to suddenly chuck it to one side because things weren't easy or because the decision you made doesn't go exactly as you expect. Your loyalty will stay because that is what love and loyalty to your country is all about. That is what patriotism is. It's what nationalism is in its greatest form. And this is what so many Brexiteers have. So the fact that they're trying to spin it now to make it look like the British people are now basically saying, oh, we want to get back into the EU. Absolutely not. I haven't spoken to a single person who voted to leave, who says they want to go back into the European Union. And yet I have come across people who voted to remain and say that if they could go back, they would vote for Brexit. So spinning, lots of spinning in the media, lots of extreme excitability from the media. And yet, once again, the reality says something very, very different. So, if you could vote again, would you vote to remain? I know I certainly wouldn't. I have lots of faith in Britain. I knew it wouldn't be an easy ride, contrary to what Alistair Campbell said. I think many of us knew it wouldn't have a magic wand and wave it overnight and say, oh yeah, well, this isn't going as planned, so let's just go back in the EU. No, that's what loyalty to country is all about. It's about knowing that despite the challenges, you will come through it. And that is exactly what will happen with this country. We just need to keep believing in Britain.
Have you got what it takes to be a reasoned presenter? Well, send us a short clip of yourself to join@reasoned.uk and we might be seeing you on this very channel very soon indeed.